Yes, and he was the one that actually really promoted, other than the sacred name, which was a little bit before that. The sacred name was like in the early 1900s. That was sacred name movement.
And what is the sacred name?
Sacred name movement is the early, they believed that God had a particular name that
you couldn't say like God and you couldn't say Jesus.
Well, yeah. It's morphed into so many things like Jesus meant. Jesus is a pagan word, Greek word for the god Zeus today.
So you could only say, what can you say? Yeshua, you can't say Jesus, right? According to them.
They don't even say Yeshua anymore.
They don't want you to say that either.
Well, no, Yeshua is like, you haven't come to the light yet, Yahoshua or Yahuwah or Yah or...
Oh, yeah, they don't want you... And when they say God, they don't have the O in it. Do you know why they don't put the O there?
No, I don't know. I didn't get into this part.
Yeah, I've seen that where they leave the O out.
Well, God. Okay, God and the word God. It's what that's actually innocent. That's not really... If you see somebody write God without the O there, it's just a respectful thing that the Israelites did.
Oh, I see.
When they didn't use the word God, but when they talked about Jehovah, they didn't use the consonants because some people think it was, like the Jehovah's Witnesses think that they didn't say the name because they were superstitious. But no, they were respectful. They didn't want to say God's name and say it inappropriately or say it with disrespect. So they didn't say it. So when you see somebody write G-O-D and leave the O out, they're actually taking that kind of ideology and bringing it to their understanding, when they say God. And so that is actually very innocent. I see a lot of people do that just out of respect for God. So I don't find any alarm in that. I do find that alarm when you hear people say Yahoshua or Yahuwah or all these funky names that and then using all the Hebraic words for the books of the Bible. They even go to the extent of changing their name to an Israelite name.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And what's following, how far deep into the Hebraic roots they have gone.
They even grow beards, and they grow their hair a funny way, and they grow their beard a funny way. They start dressing. They have the women dress funny, and it sounds like a cult. It sounds like a cult.
Well, I call the Emergent Church a cult, and I call the Hebraic roots a cult. And each one of them have all their sects to go with it. And, I'm still trying to figure out the Hebraic roots. They're far more complicated than the Emerging Church was, and I thought that was hard to figure out. And it took me a long time to really study them, about 4 years to study the Emerging Church to get just the basic understanding of
that's a lot of research. Now, that's a lot of research. But Herbert W. Armstrong, now,
he's
dead. Leader. And then, of course, his son, Ted Garner Armstrong?
I don't know who his son was, but they're called the Restored Church of God now. They're still around.
Yeah, but remember that they supposedly repented of their error. They supposedly repented of that.
They have not.
Okay, so they're still preaching that because at one time they had a magazine. I don't know if they still have it. Where they send people. The Plain Truth was their magazine. Yeah. And you could find that. It was plentiful. I think they even had it in some Christian bookstores. Used to carry it. But
the Plain Truth. On some of their false prophecies because they had a lot of false prophecies.
Okay, so maybe that's. But a few years back, I remember supposedly he admitted he was wrong about all these things, and people forgave him, and But anyway, I think his son was Ted Garner Armstrong. I don't know if he's dead or alive. I'm going to look it up on the internet. But I
don't know about his son.
Yeah, he supposedly took over after. But now this guy had been around for a long time with that magazine, the Plain Truth magazine, Armstrong.
Right.
Yeah, because he was really old when he died.
His big thing was celebrating the Sabbath, holding to the Sabbath, and starting to follow the feasts of,
Oh, so he was big on the feasts
and the Sabbath, and that's what's kind of brought, the difference to his organization, and the Sacred Name had that as well, but with the different names, So, but I think it was Herbert W. Armstrong that made it more popular. And I remember in the early 80s that it really started to bloom in the 70s and 80s to where, you really got into the sacred dance, that I did it. I did the sacred dance, which there's nothing wrong with doing all that. I actually taught Israeli praise dance, and we represented Israel and in the feasts and the International Fair in Nashville, Tennessee, where I lived. And we did weddings, and we did, marches, and we did all kinds of stuff. And those things, there's the Messianic, which the Hebraic roots call the Messianic Christians or Jews Christian. They will not call themselves Christian because they deny
the Hebrew roots
will
not call themselves Christians?
Correct. Because they believe their whole foundation of their movement is saying that Christianity was developed from the Hellenistic Hellenistic philosophy of Greek philosophy.
Oh man! Talk about people would really be confused. You would really be confused if you listened to this stuff too much.
That's only the beginning of the confusion. That's only I'm giving you basic.
You would question everything.
Well, yeah, because in order for you to change what the Bible says, you have to actually make it so it have something wrong with it. For example, they don't believe that the scriptures were written in Greek. They believe that the New Testament was really written in Aramaic and Hebrew, which is not true. It was Greek. The apostles purposely, and they even call this, Michael Rood calls this sloppy Greek, that didn't even know how to speak Greek properly, and saying that the Bible was written in Greek, the sloppy Greek, but the apostles wrote the Bible in Greek because that was the quickest way to be able to share the gospel with the whole entire world at the time, because that everybody spoke Koine Greek, and so when they wrote it could go everywhere, and the church was expanding beyond Jerusalem with Paul. And so everybody in writing did it in Greek. Now, they talk about an Aramaic text, which was actually a translation from Greek. But they say, no, Aramaic was in Aramaic. And they go to the extent of saying, well, the words that you use for atonement and all that really didn't mean what it means. In Aramaic, it totally changes the meaning. And do you know what it sounds like? Islam. What? It sounds exactly like Islam. I'm like, and this is where these Hebraic roots people are saying, you are liable. You are lying about us leading to Islam, because I put on my false teaching post, I said the Hebraic roots movement leads to Islam, and they say, no, it doesn't lead to Islam. Well, yeah, it does. It's not preaching Islam. when I say leading to Islam, that means it's creating a bridge by which Islam can come and convert Christians, because Christianity has no bridge for Islam to come and convert us. We must throw out our Christianity to accept Islam. We must get rid of what we believe to accept Islam. But the Hebraic roots already gets rid of all that we believe that is in contrast to Islam. So Islam can come in and say, well, you know what? Hey, let me give you a deeper understanding of what you already know. And so here they are.
We'll unlock the mysteries. But I wanted to ask you now, the feast days. Now, I know there's a scripture where God says, I'm getting bored with you already with all these feast days and so why is it so important for them to celebrate these feast days when really every day with the Lord, every day is the Lord's day. So it's not like, he has these important days.
Well, it's really not as much as the feast days as it is the commandments. And it's following.
So they're not big on like the Passover and the Feast of Atonement and whatever they're big on celebrating. You must celebrate these feast days forever.
Well, yeah, they would rather celebrate Hanukkah than the birth of Jesus. Really?
Oh, okay. So they do celebrate these feast days.
They do celebrate, but they would rather they fight and they dishonor Jesus being born and argue.
Oh, because you can't celebrate. Oh, no, you can't have a celebration of the birth of Jesus.
Whatever day
that is. It's a pagan holiday. It's a pagan.
Right,
that's another whole. Let's confuse people even more. Let's forget celebrating the resurrection. Let's not celebrate the birth because those were pagan holidays.
Well, do you know what Hanukkah is? Hanukkah was when the menorah was lit in the temple for 7 days.
Oh,
and
I
tell them, guess what? God came as a baby among mankind. He was the light of the world to come live with us. He was not just an oil in the lamp. He was the lamp.
Yeah.
And why you have to celebrate the Hanukkah in the temple, which is not even the real thing, and forget or actually fight against celebrating the birth of Jesus.
Yeah.
To me, that's pagan. It's pagan.
Yeah, that's pagan because, look, I'm going to remember that Jesus was born and celebrate. And I'm going to remember that he resurrected and celebrate. Yes, I'm going to celebrate. So, that's pagan, where they make such a big issue out of it. But I'm looking here, Garner Ted Armstrong was the name of Ben Armstrong's son, but he passed away in 2003. And it says that he was the son of Herbert W. Armstrong, founder of the Worldwide Church of God. So that's where it confused people because you thought it was like the Church of God, but it was called the Worldwide Church of God.
Church of God, which is now Restored Church of God. It's still around. It's called the Restored Church of God. And not that I'm leading anybody there, because don't go there.
No, don't go there. But but this is what they taught. They taught observance of the Sabbath. And he actually they were on television at one time, both of them, Herbert W. Armstrong and Ted Garner. I don't know if they still have some kind of a broadcast. They might.
They don't have a broadcast, but they do videotape clips because I've watched them on their website. So you can go and listen to them. Well, not that you should, but I'm just saying if you're anything like me, I go right into the enemy
as long as you're going and not to follow them, but to do research because their magazine, they had a very good magazine at the time. Back in the 80s, of course, people didn't have flashy magazines like the Plain Truth. And they talked a lot about end-time prophecy, so you were lured in, and you could